So I recently read this book, Why Woo Woo Works, and it's a very quality book. I would highly recommend it. I'll probably add it to my favorite books on my Amazon storefront by the time I post this, so I'll put a link to that in the description box. And one of the many things that this book talked about that I found to be quite compelling was this theory that the opposite of stress and anxiety actually isn't being in a calmed, relaxed state. The opposite of anxiety is when you're doing kind, loving, connected things with people. So let's talk about it today. Let's talk about this theory and how we could actually use it to help us when we're feeling stressed and anxious. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Anna Yudin. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology and an author. Great to see you here. Let's get into it. So this might be kind of surprising, but researchers actually don't agree on whether painful emotions are on the same spectrum as pleasant emotions. For instance, sadness and happiness. Some researchers say they're on the same spectrum. Other researchers say they're actually separate constructs, which is why sometimes you might be able to feel sad and happy at the same time. Now, this theory that we're talking about today is slightly different. It's saying anxiety and relaxation are on the same spectrum, but they're not on two different ends. We have anxiety on one side, we have relaxation in the middle, kind of like a neutral, and then we have feelings of kindness and connectedness and love on the other side of the spectrum. That is actually the opposite of stress and anxiety. So I found this theory compelling for a few reasons. We do have considerable research to show that doing acts of kindness actually improves a person's well-being. And so does practicing a specific Buddhist type of meditation called loving kindness or metta, where you're sending out sentiments of love and kindness to other people. There's also a type of fight or flight response called tend and befriend, one of the more adaptive responses to stress, in which instead of stress having a negative effect on the health of the person experiencing it, also facilitates social connectedness. So oxytocin is the hormone that's released in things like breastfeeding, in childbirth, in sex, and cuddling, and it can counteract the hormone of cortisol, which is what is released when you're feeling stressed and when you're in fight or flight. So essentially, the hormone that is designated for love counteracts the hormone that's designated for stress. I think it's really hard to just tell yourself, relax, Anna, calm down when you're feeling stressed out, when you're feeling anxious. It's not enough to just try to get yourself to neutral. Sometimes you have to do the very opposite of that thing to get yourself to a neutral point. For example, if I were to say, I want to stop complaining completely, which actually I have been trying this lately, it's not enough to just say, every time I feel the urge to complain, just nip it in the bud, just stop complaining. Instead, it's a lot more helpful to say, let me replace this negative behavior that I don't want with the complete opposite. So instead of when I catch myself complaining, just shutting up, I can try the exact opposite of saying gratitude for something, expressing thankfulness for something that I do have, or saying something kind. In the very first journaling workbook that I ever came out with, A Season of Life, there are sections that day after day prompt you to think about what is a kind thing that I did yesterday, what's a kind thing that somebody else did for me yesterday, what's a moment of connection that I experienced yesterday. And this is for exactly the same reasons, because I'm implementing positive psychology techniques. Over time, what happens when you get yourself to reflect on these things is you pay greater attention to them. In your day-to-day life, knowing, hey, tomorrow I'm going to journal, you pay attention to the ways that other people are kind to you. You try to be kinder yourself, knowing that you're going to have to put something down for this prompt tomorrow. You really savor those moments of connection a lot more. By the way, I have a small favor to ask. If you have used A Season of Life and you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate an Amazon review. It helps me so much to get the word out that people are enjoying my product. So if you could do that, I'd greatly appreciate it. And actually, if you've bought any of my workbooks or even my novel, those reviews really go a long way. But how can we make use of this theory? How can we make use of the possibility that the opposite of stress and anxiety isn't just relaxation, it's doing kind things for people? I have 6 tips, so let's talk about them. Tip number 1 is to do at least one act of kindness per day and to track it in something like A Season of Life. Obviously, you don't have to buy my journaling workbook if it's not your cup of tea, but I do encourage you to have some type of mechanism in which you reflect day in and day out about the kind things that you've done, the kind things that other people have done for you, that also get you to do more kind things for other people. Because, like I said, the research does show that when people regularly do kind things, their mental health greatly benefits because of it. Number 2, if you have a pet, take more frequent breaks to pet them, to cuddle them, to play with them, to hold them, to tend after them. One of my favorite things to do when I'm trying to take breaks in between tasks is I go and just pet my cats. And it's so soothing. I can almost feel the oxytocin being released in my brain because you're experiencing a moment of love and connection with another little innocent creature. How could that not be helpful? Tip number 3, when you're preoccupied with how bad you feel, go out there and take an other-focused approach, meaning focus on making other people feel good. Make somebody else's day a little bit better. And in turn, I promise you, if your empathy is intact, you are also going to feel better. I recently had an occasion to do a kind thing for somebody, and when I tell you, for hours afterwards, it was such a high because it means so much to be able to have a positive impact on somebody else's life. I think it can be hard sometimes to feel like we have any sort of effect on what happens in life. This is a really good way to practice that. It's a really good way to practice an internal locus of control, is to do kind things for other people and feel like it's making a difference. So when you're interacting with somebody, when you're in, let's say, a social setting that makes you anxious, instead of focusing on, oh my God, am I coming off the right way? Am I being too in my own head? Am I being awkward? Am I being uncomfortable? Stop thinking about yourself and think about the other person instead. Think about what they're saying, how to actively listen, how to validate and paraphrase what they're talking about. Focus on them, and your anxiety could decrease than if you were just focusing on yourself. Tip number 4, when you meditate, try to add a component of loving kindness. Don't just try to focus on being completely relaxed and comatose. Focus on increasing those feelings of love, on feeling unified with the entire world. I'm willing to bet if you focus on love instead of relaxation, you're actually going to feel pretty relaxed, but also a lot more euphoric. Tip number 5, when somebody is stressing you out, imagine them like a little kid that just needs a little bit of love and kindness. It just needs a little bit of compassion. Try to remind yourself why this person is doing this, what sort of childish reason they might have if they're behaving immaturely. Try to see them for their inner child that's within them. Because when somebody's being annoying, I think sometimes we give them too much power. But if we can just think of them as like a little kid that's acting out, it can be easier to remember they don't have the power to hurt me. They're acting out in this moment. They deserve compassion, and I deserve to not take it personally. And tip number 6, write somebody a gratitude letter or a letter of love when you're having a bad day. I believe this is actually a template in the Personal Growth Journal, which is another journaling workbook that I have. Writing somebody gratitude letters can be so helpful. There have actually been studies done on writing somebody gratitude letters, and they have very long-standing effects. It's the same mechanism. It's forcing yourself to think about the positive that somebody else has done or the positive that somebody else has in the way that they are as a person. And in doing so, it just makes your life better. It makes you feel like, you know what, life's actually pretty good. And so maybe I don't need to stress about that random thing. You know, while we're on the topic of all the different journaling workbooks that I have, maybe this would be a good time to actually talk about the differences between them and who could use which one best. So A Season of Life was the very first journaling workbook that I came out with. And like I said, it's an everyday journaling practice, uses a lot of positive psychology techniques, and it's really meant to keep mental health symptoms at bay by improving feelings of gratitude, joy, connectedness, kindness, and so forth. And so I've been using it for about a year at this point, and I am definitely dependent on it. I do it every single morning, unless I'm on vacation. I don't really worry about it if I'm on vacation. It has a very cumulative effect. So when you've been doing it for as long as I've been doing this technique, if you miss a week, it really doesn't make much of a difference. It's still ingrained in you to notice these things that are going to make your life better. Then the second journaling workbook that I came out with is the Personal Growth Journal. And this one is a compilation of 75 different templates that I've been using for the past 5 years or so. I started in the beginning of grad school when, stress was amping up. It was just me sort of sitting down with a blank notebook and figuring out what are the different ways that I can process through this to come out on the other side. And so the way that you use this one is on an as needed basis. So if you're experiencing some sort of painful emotion or a situation that you want to debrief, and it doesn't even have to be a negative emotion to tell you the truth. You go through the table of contents and you think about which situation fits your current situation. For instance, if you're feeling down in the dumps about something, there's probably somewhere in the table of contents this is a template for when you're feeling down. And then you go to that page and it gives you a journaling template. I personally don't need to use the personal growth journal because I came up with most of those templates. And so I already know if I'm going through a situation, I just pick up a blank notebook and I already know sort of what journaling template to use. But if you're somebody that really struggles with structuring your journaling and just, sits down in front of a blank notebook and doesn't really know what to journal, I think the personal growth journal could be really helpful for you. And then I have more recently Get It Done, a quarterly productivity planner, which is a year's worth of quarterly breakdowns. So this one is for people that struggle with productivity and motivation, who have sort of one big goal in mind and want to keep in mind their values and the end goal and implement change every single day to take those steps and build those building blocks towards the long-term goal. So this one I use every day of the week for business. I don't use it for other stuff. So first thing in the morning, I'll do a season of life where I debrief the previous day, plan out my next day, and then I have the Get It Done quarterly productivity planner where I focus specifically on what I want to do for business that day. So the two kind of overlap sometimes in terms of the to-do list, but a season of life is much more all-encompassing. It's not just related to business, whereas Get It Done is. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that in case you're wondering, okay, which one is for me? So what are your thoughts on this theory? Do you think that the opposite of stress and anxiety could be kindness instead of relaxation? Have you ever tried to get yourself to feel kindness and love as a way to offset stress? If not, is it something you think you might try in the future? Maybe you're thinking of implementing this in a way I didn't even think of in this video. Let me know what you think. I will see you soon.